Thank you for finding the Normal America Show. I'm your host, Rob Knorr. At least, if not the best content creator, most handsome content creator. We're a caller for you today. What do you think about that? Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. So, thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it. So let me be honest with you. I got some stuff going on in my life, and my job today was brutal. In addition to that, I got hired for a second job, and I will be selling life insurance, and I have to take a course and pass an exam to do so is the first step to doing that. And so I have to admit to being woefully uninformed of the news of today. But I'm still going to try. But I've been super, super busy all day. So you could make this show better by commenting your thoughts, and that'll help me riff on them and respond. But I do have some stuff to talk about. And I think that the big news today was that Andrew Sullivan from New York Magazine and Bari Weiss from the New York Times have both announced that they're resigning from their positions. And basically the reason is cancel culture. Because even centrist or left-wing journalists are now starting to wake up to, oh my goodness, the monster we've created is untenable. There is no news anymore. There is no journalism. It is despicable. Now, even they have a blind spot, but one of the things I've been saying is the shamefulness that you see with Republican leaders and even so-called Republican media outlets like Fox News. They're terrible. Where are the Republican leaders? Who's pushing back on this Marxist, racist revolution? Who's pushing back? Everyone's too afraid that's on the Republican side. Not mine. Glenn Thompson, my representative, is he pushing back? Nope, don't see that. You got Trump, Matt Gaetz, a couple others. That's about it. I've seen more pushback from centrist or left-wing people like Brett and Eric Weinstein or Bari Weiss or Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin or Matt Taibbi or Michael Tracy, Aaron Maté. All of these people have pushed back more on what we're seeing in this cancel culture, and they're on the left. Where are the right-wing people? And so with even them, it's like they see 90% of the picture. And I'm sure, hopefully I'll get to talk to some of these people someday, particularly the Weinstein brothers. I really enjoy them. I would love to talk to them because I feel, I'm sure they would disagree with me, but they have a blind spot themselves. Because they start under the auspices of, well, Trump's horrible and the Republicans are horrible and blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot negative you could say about Trump and certainly about the Republican Party. But they don't realize how that attitude of, well, this side's automatically horrible. They don't see that side, that Trump's election was a result of the horrible stuff that's been happening in journalism, in academia, for years. That's what Trump was. Trump was a pushback by us that were sick and tired of being pushed around by the people that control our culture and say that we're terrible people. I'm sick and tired, as probably everyone on here that's on the right. Thank you, Vita. I really... Yeah, and Shapiro and Crowder. Shapiro, I don't like everything he says, but certainly he's pushing back some. Crowder's good, but I have to admit, I haven't checked out much of Crowder lately because I don't even know where... even though I like him, I don't know. I have limited time and I haven't seen a lot of them. But yeah, they're pushing back. But thanks for the donation. Certainly there are some on the right. Let me not mischaracterize. But it seems like the people that are fighting back most effectively are centrist or on the left. And they have a blind spot that they don't see. This is what we've been talking. Now, don't get me wrong. You had people like Jonathan Haidt at Heterodox Academy, himself a Democrat, I believe he voted for Hillary Clinton. You have him admit how insanely extremist left-wing campuses have become. And I know I didn't have a channel this long, but I've been saying since 2005, when I was on campus, when I was in the debate team, and was in policy debate, was one of the better debaters in the country, I was seeing this radical racism, this hatred of people based on their skin color. It wasn't the white supremacists, spoiler alert. It was those that hated men and hated white people. And I saw how it was everywhere. And you couldn't defend yourself. You couldn't say, yeah, I'm white. You couldn't say that. You had to say, no, I'm not really white. I choose to reject my whiteness. That was the only way to win around. And I said, what happens in debate 10 years from now will be happening on all campus, and then 10 years from then will be in the mainstream. That's where we're at. And so when you've indoctrinated people with this postmodernist Marxist garbage for 30 years, starting in K through 12, all the way through academia, this is what happens. You turn out these people that now are going into left-wing media outlets like the New York Times, unabashedly left-wing, the New York Times, and now even left-wing people at the New York Times, although she calls herself a centrist like Bari Weiss, is saying, I can't take it anymore. That's why I say, by the way, it's important to talk to people on all sides. You should seek allies where you could get them. Because there are a lot of people on the left that are sick and tired of this. And some of them, because of their position, Tim Pool would be another. See, if you're a left-winger or a centrist, then you have more leeway. Because you have the bona fides, right? So you could say, I think this is a danger, what we see occurring here. Noam Chomsky could sign a letter saying that because he's a darling of the left. But Tucker Carlson can't say that or he's a racist. And so for some reason, everyone on the right is afraid to be called a racist now. Let me make my point real quick again here. I'm not a racist at all. Me thinking Black Lives Matter is a racist terrorist organization that wants to usher in Marxists doesn't mean I don't care about Black lives. To the contrary, I think it's shameful how little our government has done to help inner city blacks. I talk about it all the time. I talk about all the time about how I think some of the greatest Americans this country has ever had is people that have came out of these inner cities and achieved despite of that, something that I know I wouldn't have had the strength of character to do. But I'm done saying, I'm not a racist. I'm not. So I don't take the accusation seriously. Trina on Periscope says, you are a white supremacist. Thank you. Real salient point there. I don't take the accusation seriously because it's obviously garbage. Luciano, Jared, 223, thank you all for being here. Who else I missed? JoJo's my brother, Jeff and Katz. Thanks for being here, man. Thank you for the kind words on Twitter, by the way, Jeff and Katz. Kishki, haven't talked to you in a while. Thanks for being here. Right, and you say, Repubs are hedging their bets. If Trump loses, they divest themselves of responsibility, then resume pandering to the alt-left mobs. No better than Dem right now. Yeah, I agree. So that's why it's important, though, to understand that you could reach it. Look, I say this all the time. The corruption in the establishment is so severe, it's the only issue that should matter. They're embracing this Marxist ideology, this terrorism, this racism is disgusting, and they're fully embracing it right now. So there are sensible people on the left. We might disagree over policies on some things, but that's fine. That reasonable people could disagree. But I don't know why everyone's afraid of being called a racist. It's stupid. You know what's in your heart. If you're not a racist, don't be afraid to cite facts. So we see it occurring with people on the left. Thank you. Yeah, Jeff and Katz really liked my live stream last night on COVID. If you're tired of being attacked because you choose not to wear a mask, then watch the live stream I did yesterday. Now, let me be quite blunt. I do wear a mask. But I do have comorbidities. I'm a big fat guy, plus I have asthma, and I work in the healthcare field. And I work for an employer that has asked me to wear a mask, and I believe it's their right as an employer to ask me, and so I do that. My point was, I understand why people are distrusting because the leaders have lied to us, have acted in a hypocritical manner. They lied to us directly about masks, and they're applying it in a political manner for political power. So I understand people that refuse to listen to them. That's all I was saying. They purposely discouraged investigating hydroxychloroquine, which had the potential to save lives, because they'd rather see people die than actually have a fair discussion of the science. It's the same reason that they don't want kids to go back to school. They don't care about the science. So yeah, check that show. Stuart, thanks for being here. One tortilla chip. Doesn't matter you're late. I save all my good stuff for a half hour in anyways. Yeah, Abaddon, I have a lot of trouble breathing with a mask. Absolutely, I have a lot of trouble being an asthmatic and a fat guy. Let's not forget that. By the way, I've lost like 3 pounds. I'm trying to do better. Feel free to fat shame me anytime you want. I gotta lose weight, and I'm eating better. I'm starting like an exercise routine, so feel free. Fat shame me anytime you want. Doesn't bother me. Do I think that gimmicky Trump types are getting all confident again because of election season? I'm not sure. So do you mean like people that support Trump, but that are kind of like just rah-rah, and they're going to support Trump no matter what. They're getting confident because they think he's going to win the election. I think that there's some of that. I don't begrudge those people that just want to cheer. It's not for me, though. I can't do that. Like, my principles will not let me just cheer for a person or just cheer for a party. I have to call out, even especially when I see my side do something wrong, which is why I've criticized Trump many times on here. So, it's not my thing, but, I guess it is what it is. Oh, yeah, Jesse, thank you. So, anyways, that was the story with yesterday with COVID. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to jump, and again, I apologize. I'm getting a second job. Working 70 hours a week isn't enough for me, so I got to work more. I'm coming on to being a dad for the first time here, so I'm doing everything humanly possible to make sure that when my wife has a baby, she doesn't have to go back to work. If that means getting a second job, so be it. I'll still be doing the channel, don't worry. Anyways, though, because of that, I didn't have time to really prepare a full show. But what I did do was cite articles that I saw on Twitter, or posts that I saw on Twitter, that I thought would be interesting to talk about. And, yeah, I just bookmarked them, and let's do it. Let's see what we got here. That's my restream feed. That's not going to help us. All right. Number 1. AOC suggests New York crime surge due to unemployment. Residents who need to shoplift some bread. And this is a misnomer I hear all the time, right? The idea, when I debated the Black Lives Matter guy the other day. Yeah, well, real quick, Long Langoba Sapien says on Twitch, I work 70 hours a week. Yes, I do. I do home. I don't even get paid for that full 70 hours, though, because some of it's considered sleep time. So the way it works is I usually have trainings once a week, but I go into work Sunday night, and I'm there 24/7 straight through till Wednesday. It used to be I was here till Friday. And so I'm here 24/7. So in addition to that, then I usually have trainings and things I have to do on my days off. So, yep, last year I think I averaged 73 hours a week. This year I think I'm down to like 69, 70 hours a week. But yeah, that's what I'm working. So thank you for inquiring, though. Yeah, and I'm trying to sell insurance on top of that. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully if I'm good at selling insurance. Oh, you were watching Doug Sneed? I hope his show went good. Patriot Art, thanks for being here. So anyways, I'll go back to this just for those just joining. The first article or post I wanted to talk about, AOC suggests New York City crime surge due to unemployment. Now, when I debated Prime K's, who's a Black Lives Matter supporter there last week, this was something that I've heard him say often in discussions we've had in the past, that, the looting and stuff, it's just people that need resources. That's not true. They're not looting bread. They're looting televisions, and it doesn't explain the murder rates increasing. And he said, prove to me the murder rates are increasing. We'll get to a story here later where now prominent black New Yorkers are suggesting, are you ready for this? Maybe it was a bad idea to disband the plainclothes cops unit, as we've seen a 1-year-old be shot just yesterday, I believe. I believe the murder rate compared to this month last year is up 125% in New York City. By the way, it's happening all across the country when they've defunded the police or suggested defunding the police, because not only are they physically taking police off the streets, but they're demoralizing police, which, as studies have showed over and over, this creates what they call the Ferguson effect, which means the police that are there are no longer confident that their unions or that their mayors have their backs, and so they just say, hey, I'm not going to risk becoming the next Darren Wilson, who was wrongfully accused of shooting Michael Brown when it was justified shoot. He was wrongly accused of murdering him. I'm not going to be that next guy to have my life ruined, so I'm just going to stay out of these communities. And predictably, homicides go up. But you have people like AOC. She said that it would be like suburbs. That's what it would be like if you defunded the police. And then, according to Tucker's show last night, actually AOC grew up in a suburb that didn't have their own police force. They used the neighboring police force because it was very peaceful there. This is the kind of insanity that these Marxists are pushing. They live in they don't live in reality. They think that the only reason there are crimes in the inner city is because there are police there. And if you remove the police, then all of a sudden there wouldn't be crime. It's absurd. People aren't murdering because they need bread to eat. And the fact that she would try to conflate this shows that she's not actually serious about solving this. And again, the first thing you need to do to be able to solve a problem is to correctly identify what the problem is. This is one of my big problems with Black Lives Matter. They say everything's systemic racism. It's about cops, racist cops running around shooting unarmed black men. That's not true. And so when they don't correctly identify the problem, all the solutions that they offer won't solve the real problem. which is homicide rates in the black community and their strained relationship with the police. Is there blame to go on the police? Absolutely. The guy that killed George Floyd absolutely should be brought to justice. There's other things about policing I don't like, and we need more of a community policing. We need to end sort of a for-profit policing. So there's blame to go on police, but most police are great people, and they get crap shoveled on them over and over and over, especially recently, for crap wages to go in these dangerous areas. And it's a necessary job. Yet our community and all the institutions have decided to treat them like garbage. But that doesn't mean that there aren't improvements that could be made. But half of that has to be, how can the other side improve? And when we have a culture that encourages African Americans to think that the police are out to kill them and that everything is racist, then they're not going to comply with the police, which leads to more violent interactions with the police. Just like we saw in Atlanta with Rayshard Brooks. Is that his name? Yeah. That's right. And part of my disagreement, or part of my hatred of Black Lives Matter, and part of the things I've been saying is, look, even if you're just primarily focused on the black community, the very community that will be hurt the quickest and the most by the suggestions or the policy implementations that Black Lives Matter want are inner city blacks. So defunding or removing police will cause homicides to go up in inner city black neighborhoods. Dismantling the nuclear family, as Black Lives Matter suggests, who's that going to hurt? Inner city black communities that have 75% of children born out of wedlock. So that's part of it. But I'm called a racist for saying, look, the policies that Black Lives Matter is offering will be worse for black people. We can already see it. We can see it occurring in real time. Homicides going through the roof. They're more concerned. And when you ask them, you're like, what about this? I asked this guy Prime Case the other day I was debating. What about that? Don't you tell me what to focus on. I choose to focus on the police interaction with black people. I don't have to focus on the 7,000 blacks that were killed on black homicide last year. I don't have to focus on that. Don Lemon admitted, that's not what Black Lives Matter. If you want to focus on something, you create your own movement. You're right. I don't have the right to tell you what you should focus on. I have the right to call you a hypocrite. You're focused on such a minor thing. Oh, look at these jaywalking statistics. Black people are more likely to be pulled over. By the way, the next time that comes up, I have the study and the Bureau of Justice. For example, over 70% of black people that were pulled over, according to a Bureau of Justice statistics in 2018, claimed that they thought the police pulled them over for a legitimate reason. So the majority of black people that get pulled over don't feel they're being pulled over just for being black. And those that do, the 30%, many of it could have been because they've been encouraged to think that way. Any study that talks about disproportionate rates of one group being pulled over for based on another, that doesn't necessarily prove that the police are bigoted towards that group. It could prove that that group commits these violations more. For example, the Black Lives Matter crowd won't deal with this, but as big of a disparity as there is between black and white people in the criminal justice system, there's a bigger disparity between men and women. Does that prove that the police are misandrist? That they hate men? They're bigoted towards men? Well, no. People say, that as soon as you say this, instantly, the Black Lives Matter people go, well, men commit more crime. Oh. So what you're saying is, just because we have a data point that says one group's pulled over more than another, doesn't prove that the police did so because they're bigoted. Well, and Luciano says that cops are disappearing randomly anyways. Yeah, who in their right mind that's a younger person would want to get into law enforcement now? See, Black Lives Matter's already won that battle. Because even if they never get any of their policy prescriptions, they've demoralized people so much into entering law enforcement that we're going to see a short circuit of law enforcement people. And the people you'll get are people that are underqualified. The best people will no longer go into law enforcement. They'll go in security or the military or something else. They won't touch law enforcement. And so the net result will be tragedy for the country and particularly for inner city communities that need law enforcement more than anyone. Anyways, I got off on a tangent, but my point is, AOC, you see how they'll make excuses. You know, part of me, and tell me if you're like this, part of me sometimes says, you know what? If we could just say for a year, give these psychopaths everything they want. You know, all the Marxist garbage fascists they want, fascism they want, give it to them for a year. Because it would be so horrible that then we'd be able to say, you see? But then the reality is, you see someone like AOC and you're like, oh wait, it wouldn't work. These are Marxists. They're the same people that when you say Marxism, can you point to a country that it's worked? Well, it's never been really tried. So it doesn't matter how much empirical evidence you have that their ideas are garbage. They don't care about truth. They want to erase history anyways. So AOC is able to look at the increase in homicides based on a mentality that she's pushing to fund the police. And she says, oh, it must be because they need bread. No amount of evidence will change her mind. Homicides could go up 5,000%. She'd still say, what we need is less police. That's what she would say. That's what the Black Lives Matter people would say. All right, next article. Or post. I guess these aren't articles. In the same vein, Lori Lightfoot, that's Chicago's mayor, blames city's historic murder rate on lack of federal strategy. And you see this with COVID as well. So what happens is, Democrats, anytime something good happens, they say, we're responsible, it's not Trump. The economy's doing good, it's Obama's economy. It's the Democrats. Then when leaders in their cities have terrible cities, they say, oh, it's not Trump's fault. COVID? Oh, we had the mayors of Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all Democratic governors. We had all them force COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, creating death camps in these nursing homes. Trump's fault. Homicide skyrocketing in Chicago after Chicago's talking about defunding the police and all this stuff. Trump's fault. What exactly? Now, you see the position they put Trump in. So if Trump would say, oh, you're right, Lori Lightfoot, let me send in the Marines, let me send in the National Guard, and we'll help take care of this. Do you think she'd be like, oh, thank you, Mr. President, finally, you're taking steps to solving this? Of course not. They would call him a dictator. So they set up these hellholes where they do nothing for these communities, and in fact, they demoralize the police, which causes more homicides, and then predictably, when more homicides occur, under their watch, they say, well, it's not my fault. It's someone else's fault. It's the federal government's fault. Always the case. This is what they always do. Let's see what's saying. Beetlejuice. Dinosaur on my phone here. My daughter's asleep. Oh, can't respond. Gotcha. Achilles Ware on YouTube says, I live in Minnesota and I say hell no to the release money for Democrats to screw up. A natural disaster consists of the earth causing a disaster. When a Democrat destroys a state or a city, that's their fault. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing Trump was absolutely right. And I've said this from the get-go. That's exact. Trump should have went to all these cities, said, okay, your city's cops got overran by these mobs. They're burning down your city. We will send in the National Guard. If you refuse to accept the National Guard, my hat's off to you. Good luck. You will get no federal funding. He should say that to every single place. You want to cause your cities to burn down? You deal with the consequences. Now, I know that there's an argument that, but that'll hurt Trump's election chances because people in those cities won't vote for Trump. They got to learn somehow. I'm all for it when natural disasters or act of terrorism and things like that. If there would have been a good faith effort by Minnesota or by Minneapolis to deal with the rioters, then I would say yes, the federal government should step in and help with money to rebuild the city. But they intentionally let the city burn, so therefore they should have to pay the cost. Kishki says, Luciano, there's been a massive push for minority police. Those cops also enforce the law. They got to go. Not only that was the big movement of the civil rights movement. They said if we just had police that looked more like the populations they're policing, this would solve everything. Now that's the case. In most of these inner cities, you have majoritarily black police. You have majoritarily black leadership in the police department. You have majoritarily black, or at least Democrat representation. And yet the problems persist. In fact, studies show that black police officers are more likely, slightly, to use their weapons against black suspects than white cops are. So are the black cops racist as well? Let's see what else is in the chat. I'm trying to keep up. The right's been terrible since Bush Jr. Yeah, I agree. Trump was again, the reason I voted for Trump and thought he was good was because he was a potential outsider. And as a potential outsider, he forced the corrupt establishment to out themselves to everyone like never before. And so we have him to thank for that. Right, there's a lot of black cops all over the place in 223, including Atlanta. Kat Ballou says, what's Trump's plan for COVID? Serious question. It's a good question, right? And I've criticized Trump. For example, I was against the lockdown initially. I thought that we should have had statewide and federal-wide plans that would have protected the most vulnerable populations. So took our resources and ensured that nursing homes had beds available, had spacing available, had people being tested that were coming in every day, even if it was just simple temperature tests, to make sure that there was no people working there that were getting COVID that could spread it in the nursing home, to make sure if a nursing home patient got COVID that they had a proper facility to go to where they were isolated in a hospital so they wouldn't spread it to the other vulnerable populations. I think that Trump dropped the ball on this. I think that the lockdown was a huge mistake. There's no evidence that it helped solve anything. So I think, though, the other part is, like, what did you want Trump to do when it comes state to state? Was he supposed to come in and say, I mean, I personally would have liked to have seen Trump come in and say, no, you can't take away people's right to worship. You can't do this. You can't do that. But most of the people say that would have been more of a mistake. So what did you want Trump to do with COVID? You know, I think that there's probably more that could be done as far as preparation. That's not just Trump, but was every president before. For example, we outsourced 80% of our medical supply creation to China, the very place that's responsible for this virus coming to the United States. So Trump could do things like go after China more and bring back manufacturing, bring back the medical industry to this country. Those are things he could do. Specifically, what could he do with COVID? He could continue to fund research to provide possible cures into studies like hydroxychloroquine or other medications that could possibly cure. He could continue to provide spaces and to make sure that people in nursing homes and the most vulnerable populations are well protected. He could continue to provide support to make sure that people get to go to work and get to do their Bill of Rights in order to make sure that there are more resources, because our economy will start going back so we have resources to take care of the vulnerable populations. But what can he do if governors are essentially setting up death camps in these nursing homes? What else we got? What's up, Tiberius? Thanks for being here, man. Let's see. Right, and I talked about this last night, Luciano. They preyed on the elderly. That's exactly what they did. Either they're the dumbest... Again, can anyone here, and even if you're on the left and you think I'm a white supremacist or whatever, honestly, anyone here, is there anyone here that didn't know that the elderly, particularly people in nursing homes, were the most vulnerable population? Anyone? Is there anyone in America that, has any base level of competency when it comes to illness? Oh, there's some kind of virus? Yep, probably affects old people that are sick the most, right? Everybody knows that. Children know that. So how could you explain then putting COVID-positive patients into nursing homes? What's the explanation? Well, judge them not by their words, but by their actions. They were quick to point to all those deaths and say, see, we need to go after conservatives. We need to keep people shut down and so they can't go to work. We need to close down churches. Oh, but it's cool to go riot if you're in Black Lives Matter. That's cool. That's all right. But all these other groups, they need to shut down. Oh, and it's Trump's fault. It's Trump. Look how many people died. Trump's terrible. So if it's an action that was so stupid it defies belief, and then they took advantage of it and pointed to the deaths they caused as reason to attack Trump and to attack Trump supporters and to attack this economy and to attack all Americans' rights, I would say that the most likely explanation is they wanted those deaths. Reported. What did I do? Oh. Cat Ballou says on Periscope that Trump ignored the virus. I mean, he offered to do things like, for example, in February, he wanted to have a travel ban from China, which was roundly ridiculed by everyone in every institution. Turns out that was the right thing. He had his own chief advisor, Dr. Fauci, that the left loves, telling him in January, this is nothing to worry about. So I don't know that he ignored it. Like, I hear this criticism, like, it's funny, when I debated Destiny, he was like, well, Trump should have had testing, he should have did this, he should have did that, he should have did this. Okay, but if the last president would have been on the ball, all of that stuff would have already been available. And it's easy to look back in hindsight and say this should have happened, that should have happened. But how are we going to put the blame on Trump when if Trump would have acted and superseded these governors, they would have called him a dictator? And when the governors themselves are responsible for so many of the deaths through their poor policy decisions. Now, does that mean Trump's without blame? No. I criticize Trump. Go back and look at my videos at March. I lost tons of subscribers for calling out Trump over this. So by no means do I think that he did a good job on COVID. I don't. I don't at all. And I think that there's a lot of criticism that could be levied his way. But we're not looking at it in a vacuum. We're looking at it in comparison to what did the other side offer? What were other people offering? Nothing. Worse. You know? Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with the chat. Yeah, Kishki, you say that the nursing home thing, there could be class actions coming in years. I agree. And there should be. It's horrific. There should be criminal investigations, what there should be. Yeah, Jesse, I have seen where they plan to repeal part of the civil rights legislation in California. Basically, the part that says that you can't enact policies specifically based on racial discrimination, but they want to be able to discriminate against certain races, see white people, and so they're trying to repeal part of that Civil Rights Act. I told people this is what Black Lives Matter wants. The agenda here is a return to Jim Crow. That's what they want. It's just, they don't want equality. They want a return to Jim Crow, except they're in the position of power. They want revenge. They want the power. They want, you see it all the time. Look at the Chaz Zone, black-only spaces. Universities, black-only spaces. We want hospitals staffed by black people for black people. This is segregation. Race-based policies that benefit one particular race. That's racism. Yeah, I agree with you, Luciano. Too many people do think Trump's above criticism. Now, again, am I going to vote for Trump? Yes. But I'll criticize him. I have many times, and I've lost many subscribers. And let me say this. The last thing I'll say about COVID, and then I'm going to move on, right? There are a lot of Johnny-come-latelys that are like, oh my goodness, can you admit that, look at all the stuff that went wrong. Look at how this is being politicized with COVID. There were conservatives that were Trump supporters when Trump was saying, giving lip service saying, I talked to Gavin Newsom. I talked to Cuomo. The lockdowns are good. I support what they're doing. I think it's a mistake for Georgia to lift the lockdown. There are a lot of Trump supporters that were telling me that I was an idiot, that I was horrible, that I was going against Trump, and that I was a terrible person. Now these Johnny-come-latelys, all of a sudden, they're like, look at how COVID's being politicized. Hate to say I told you so. Just because Trump backed it didn't mean it was right. All right, next post. Next. All right. 83% of LA teachers vote to stay closed in the fall. Will not open schools unless charter schools are closed and police are defunded. I guess we will talk about COVID a little more. So the argument is, all the science shows that the regular old influenza is worse for people under the age of 18. It's deadlier, it's more infectious than COVID. Every country that in Europe that we look at as a model and say, look, they did it better than the United States, every single one of them have opened up schools. There is no evidence whatsoever that opening up schools is a danger. There's plenty of evidence that not opening up schools is a danger. Not only for education reasons, because a lot of kids, that's the only square meal they get a day. There's a lot of abuse that occurs in the house, that people going to schools, when kids go to school, you're able to keep a better eye on them. Socialization skills being lost, education skills being lost, all of this stuff. Not to mention the economic impact of, well, if you're, a single parent, or even if you're, two parents and you both work, now you have to pay for childcare or not go to work because your kid's not going to go to school. And despite it being against all the scientific evidence, but they still say, Pelosi's out there saying, we have to shut it down. We have to shut it down. We have to shut it down. And the teachers are very afraid. Again, this is one of the things I said way back in March when we had our first stimulus bill against COVID. By the way, do you see, again, Trump supporters, a lot of them gave me crap for that. We need to do this. We need to spend these trillions of dollars. And I said, wait until you see how wasteful this spending is. Now we know that Planned Parenthood got money, and the Lakers got money, and Shake Shack got money, and millionaires were getting money. Robert De Niro's restaurants were getting money. My friends that have small businesses couldn't get it. But all these millionaires got it. Good deal Way to spend trillions and put us in perpetual debt over that to make rich people more money. Great. And I said, this is how you know they're not serious. Because if it was really about getting us through an emergency with COVID and getting us through an emergency of the economic disaster as a result from these lockdowns, then the focus would have been real simple. It would have been, okay, how do we help small businesses? How do we help people that can't afford to pay their mortgages? And I would have been okay with that. But it wasn't. They included all this other crap. Remember that? Remember the first Democrat bill that the Republicans had to fight back against, but then still caved in on half of it? That included all this Green New Deal crap about race and other stuff like that. What did that have to do with COVID? And I said, right out of the gate, this is how you know they're not serious. If it was really about this disease killing millions of people and the economic fallout from having to fight this disease, they wouldn't be pushing all this abortion crap and this Green New Deal crap and this reparations crap. They wouldn't be pushing that. But that's what they were doing, which lets you know they're not serious. It's the same with the teachers' unions. So we're supposed to believe they're afraid of COVID, yet somehow they're like, oh, and by the way, defund the police and we don't want charter schools. Why don't they want charter schools? Well, because the unions then wouldn't get paid, these teachers' unions. And again, study after study shows, particularly in inner cities, charter schools are the best place for education. Why shouldn't we be giving parents more school choice? Instead, the Democrats, the party that supposedly is there to help the inner cities, they're doing everything they can to stop parents from being able to choose where to send their kids and to send them to charter schools where they could get a proper education. I don't disagree with you, Kat, that there are people, Mitch McConnell and them are pushing garbage on the right as well. My argument is, it is clear that the leadership in Congress in both parties weren't solely focused on COVID. If you're asking Americans to make a huge sacrifice because you say this illness is so severe it could kill millions of people, the least you could do is be singularly focused on it. Instead, both parties are trying to put crap in that has nothing to do with COVID or the economic fallout. And the Democrats are worse. Let's not kid ourselves. But yeah, I agree. Let's see, did I miss anything in the chat? Right, they have less bullying and violence. They teach discipline. It's proven. Charter schools, the percentage of people that graduate that are competent and be able to pass reading and math scores are through the roof, particularly in inner cities. The people that graduate from there are less likely to get in trouble with the law. The stats are unbelievable on it. Yet the Democrats are widely against it. All right, moving on. But just you understand, if they were concerned about, if the teacher said, no, I'm concerned about getting sick, we're not going back, they wouldn't say, we're not going back unless you defund the police, unless you end charter schools. It's ridiculous. They're playing politics with the disease that they're saying could kill us all. And we see this over and over. Okay. All right, now we get to the audio portion.
Because Western knowledge,
Let me give you a little insight as to what universities look like. Now, every time, again, when I debate someone about Black Lives Matter and critical race theory and intersectionality, as you see, they deny reality. Oh, no, it's not racist. It's just this thing that says we should look at people's races, and it could be white people or black people, it could be men or it could be women. It's all good. It's all lovey stuff. There's no racism here. Okay, have a listen to this. I'll shut my mic off for a minute. Let me know if you guys can hear this. I hope you can.
It's fine. But Western modernity is the direct antagonistic factor to decolonization because Western knowledge is totalizing. It is saying that it was Newton and only Newton who knew or saw an apple falling and then out of nowhere decided that gravity existed and created an equation, and that is it. For whether people knew Newton or not, or whether whatever happens in Western Africa, Northern Africa, the thing is, the only way to explain gravity is through Newton, who sat under a tree and saw an apple fall. So Western modernity is the problem that decolonization directly deals with, to say that we are going to decolonize by having knowledge that is produced by us, that speaks to us, and that is able to accommodate knowledge from our perspective. So if you're saying that you disagree with her approach, it means that you are vested in the Western and Eurocentric way of understanding, which means you yourself still need to go back internally, decolonize your mind, come back and say, how can I re-look at what I've been studying all these years? Because Western knowledge is very pathetic, to say the least. I, from a decolonized perspective, believe we can do more as new knowledge producers, as people who are given the ability to reason or whatever is that people say we do when we think or rationalize. So decolonizing the science would mean doing away with it entirely and starting all over again to deal with how we respond to the environment and how we understand it. Thank you.
Oops. Did you get that? Did you hear that? Have you heard someone tell you about this before? These are postmodernists. They don't believe in truth. They are antithetical to science. They don't believe in the sciences. They believe that modernity and the Enlightenment and all of the knowledge that we've gained, so your medicine, your, gravity she's talking about there, it's all a lie. It's a lie. It's all racist. It was colonialization knowledge. And so we need to scrap it all and start over. Gravity. She specifically mentions gravity. Oh, they just said they're just white racists that were like gravity, and now we believe in gravity. You're starting to see the crap that's going on here. They don't believe in truth. If they believe that modernity and the Enlightenment is wrong, and they believe that we can't even believe things like gravity, they don't believe in truth. They believe in subjective truth. And you can hear them talk about it. She knows more than you, because she knows if you disagree with her, your mindset is that of colonialization. And so you have to be outside of colonialization to understand the real truth. And by the way, what is being outside of colonialization? If you agree with her. So if you disagree, it proves you're a racist. This isn't just one person saying this. This is critical race theory. This is intersectionality. This is what they believe. That's why they're pushing things like the trans movement so strong. Again, I've said a million times, I think that bullying people that are trans is horribly wrong. I think if someone's trans, I totally respect their choice. I would be friends with them. I don't care. I don't care at all. But the fact that we're being forced to deny reality and cancel people that say, wait a minute, we have 500,000 years of human evolution that show that this isn't necessarily the case. Now, I'm not saying that I'm willing to listen to arguments on the other side, but I'm not suggesting canceling people that disagree with me. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't. It's just sophistry. And I dealt with this in debate all the time. They just say words. It sounds impressive if you are impressed by just babbling, but it's nothing. That's what we see. Luciano, you wanted to ask a question. I didn't see it. Go ahead. You said you had a quick question. I missed it, though. Let's see if I can find it. Do I do Cash App? I do not, but it's something I would look into if you want. Probably the easiest way to donate to me is to be a member of D Live and just donate me lemons on there, because I get 100% of that. Or you could follow me, you could super chat on YouTube, or PayPal or Patreon, which I'll put the links up by the end of the show. And the easiest way, if you want to just cut out all the middleman, I'll put my email up. It's rob.noor@gmail.com. And if you email me, I'll give you my P.O. box, and you can send me whatever you want through P.O. box. Within reason, nothing gross. Yeah, BPW actually got in touch with me on email, and I gave him my... So... That's what we're facing. This is what that person right there will be in a position of leadership in 4 or 5 years. That's the type of person that's working at the New York Times. That's the type of person that wrote the book White Privilege. See, white people are born with inherent sin, and they have all these racist thoughts like science. You know, like, consider this. The very same people that are the most vocal about needing to lock down because COVID and scream, trust the experts, trust Dr. Fauci. Some of them are these people that are saying, by the way, Western science is colonialization and needs to be rejected. Okay. How are these two things jive? But they don't care that it doesn't jive because they don't believe in truth. That's like, think of this. You have Antifa that support Marxism. Antifa, which is anti-fascism, basically an anarchist movement that supports communism, which is one of the most authoritarian dictator governments you could have. How does this make sense? It doesn't have to. They don't care. They'll lie right to your face. They'll have internal contradictions. It doesn't matter. Literally, you could like take a real world issue, like my boy Endermax that was on here last night wishing that I get COVID. You take those type of people. They'll tell you with a straight face, Republicans won't wear masks, they won't follow social distance orders, it's their fault that COVID's spreading. And you're like, oh, what about Black Lives Matter? Nah, it was different, they didn't spread it. And they don't get the internal contradiction. That's the type of garbage you're seeing, what that girl just said on campuses. That's what I debated against over and over in the debate community. Next. Oh, it's just a quick little aside here, right? And again, sorry I'm a little disorganized. I'm working on getting a second job and stuff like that, so, you know. Here's a story. California primary highlights drawbacks as mail-in voting after state rejects 100,000 ballots. Huh. I thought they were secure. I thought mail-in ballots were totally secure. 100,000? Heck, even if you're on the left and you're saying, well, we want everyone to have a right to vote and blah, 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 wouldn't you be concerned about this, that 100,000 people lost their right to vote? And if you read the article, it talks specifically about how a lot of this was people filing after the deadline. There's been another article I saw that said that a lot of it was improper postmarking by people at the post office. And my friend Carlos Saldivia, who does my radio show with me Saturday, he brought up this point. He said, what if you had postal workers that understood that certain zip codes were more likely to vote one way than another? So maybe rural Pennsylvania, oh, that zip code's most likely to vote for Trump. Maybe I just won't properly mark this. How would we ever prove intent? By the time we realized it'd be too late, the election would be done. 100,000, that's right, 100,000. That's mail-in voting for you. That's just the primary. Wait until it gets to the general election. I'm not going to harp on it. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, again and again, but I'll just say my quick point. If the Democrats were willing to stop a conversation into a potential health life-saving drug in hydroxychloroquine, not saying, hey, we should curb our enthusiasm, about whether or not this drug will be as successful as Trump's saying. They didn't say that. They said it was immoral and wrong for Trump to discuss it. And then they had The Lancet, one of the premier medical journals, do a fake study that they later had to retract, showing that hydroxychloroquine was terrible. They cheered against even researching a potential life-saving drug because they would rather people die to harm Trump than to save lives. They cheered for riots. They're cheering for kids not to go back to school. If you think that the party that's doing all of that is beyond doing a little voter fraud, you're nuts. Maybe Trump does mail in his vote. I don't care. We need stricter voting laws. And again, this is something... So I hear this a lot. Oh, well, if you have problems with mail-in voting, then you should be discouraging Republicans from using it. Well, I am one. And second, isn't that how it always works? Set up a system so that the Democrats could cheat with it, and then if the Republicans try to do a similar thing, not even cheat, but try to do things legitimately using that system, they say, no. Like, let me give you an example. Do you remember when, I believe it was The Guardian in 2013 or 2014, wrote a very positive article about Barack Obama and his team and how they shrewdly worked with the people that ran Facebook to get analytic data so they were able to target people with targeted ads. It was great. It was the future of politics, said The Guardian. Then fast forward 4 years later to 2017, and the Republicans started to do the same thing. They hired a firm called Cambridge Analytica. that used limited data on Facebook. Unlike the Democrats did it better. They worked with Facebook. The Republicans, they can't work with Zuckerberg, so they hire a firm that used just a little bit of the data on Facebook. And the same article that said it was the future of politics said, oh, this is horrible. Republicans can't do this. That's so unethical. And the Democrats were furious and investigations were launched. You see, they set the process up. They said, yeah, we'll use all this data. People didn't give their consent in Facebook for us to use the data, but we're going to use it anyways. And everyone said, yes, very sure. When the Republicans start doing it, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, Kapaloo, here's something I'll heavily disagree with you. So Trump shouldn't have talked about hydroxychloroquine because he's not a medical expert. Oh, so fair enough. So then Trump should have just stood up and said, there's no hope. There's nothing on the horizon. We have nothing coming. We're all going to die of COVID. That's what you wanted, Kapaloo? That's what you wanted? You don't want your leaders coming out and saying, look, there are hopeful things on the horizon. Here's this drug, hydroxychloroquine. It's showing positive. UV lights, it's showing positive. All of a sudden, Trump couldn't say any of that. So you would never, if a Democrat, for example, if there was a Democratic leader, so Obama during swine flu, if he would have, or H1N1, if he would have came out and said, look, I've been talking and there's several promising antibiotics that are on the way, you would have said, oh, no, Obama, you can't say that. You're not a medical expert. You can't say that at all. You just stand up there and be doom and gloom. You say we're all dead. This is so stupid. He did tell the truth. He talked to medical experts that said there was promising results from hydroxychloroquine. He told the truth. And then the Democrats and the media said, oh, no, it's not fully vetted. He caused people to drink fish cleaner. Ridiculous. All right. Next. This is a quick one. Opinion. The Washington Post. Texas Ranger team name must go. Members of the Texas Rangers force were violent agents of white supremacy. You think it was going to end with the Redskins? You thought that was going to be the end of it? Right, Kat, I agree. Obama wouldn't have said that. Of course, the media wouldn't have been hyping H1N1 as a huge failure of Obama, even though tens of thousands of people were dying. So Obama wouldn't have needed to say that. But I understand, Kat. I understand the position of the Democrats, which is, it's the end of the world, Trump's evil, everyone's going to die from COVID, and if Trump suggests that, wait a minute, things aren't as bad as they seem, then he's an evil Nazi dictator. I get it. I get that people on the left, hopefully not you, but wanted Trump to just stand there and say, yes, you're right, we're all going to die. Please wear your mask. Please leave Black Lives Matter riot. Republicans, please don't leave your house. You have to lose your jobs. Never do anything again. Don't go to church. Just stay at home. I can't talk about any medications that are on the horizon, but please, Black Lives Matter, keep rioting. That's the appropriate thing to do. That won't cause the spread of the virus. I understand that's what Democrats wanted Trump to say. I totally get that, Kat. You're right, Obama wouldn't have had to say that because all of the institutions were on Obama's side, and they would have said it for him. They would have been out there saying there's promising medications on the rise. Obama's doing a great job. He's the man. He's awesome. This virus isn't a big thing. Don't worry about it. But that's not what they do under Trump. But I love it. I love that people say, oh, we're going to criticize it. Just like Kat, you're like my friend Tom, right? The same thing he said. He was furious that Trump suggested sending the Marines. So didn't care that the Democrats allowed their cities be overtaken by violent mobs. Didn't care that they refused the help of the National Guard. But then when Trump said, okay, I got to do something, they said, aha, see, Trump's horrible. How do you define, Kat Blue says H1N1 was contained. How many people died of H1N1, Kat? How do we consider a virus contained? How many people would die before we consider it contained? Do you think that had, Republican governors been intentionally infecting people in nursing homes with H1N1, that things would have gotten worse? I mean, it's just insanity. This is what I don't understand for people on the left. How can you, what is the big claim here? What is the big anger about? How dare Trump talk about potential cures? It's so stupid. It's just beyond dumb. I can't believe the stupidity of this. We don't want our leaders talking about potential cures. What's the harm in talking about it? What was the harm in saying we are looking at potential cures? What was the harm again? Some moron drank fish cleaner? Okay, so if Nancy Pelosi says, hey, if you have a headache, take Tylenol, and I go and chug 3 bottles of vodka and a bottle of Tylenol, are you going to say, Nancy Pelosi's not a medical expert, she shouldn't have been talking about Tylenol? It's so dumb. And it just makes you look like a fool. And it makes you look, not you personally, but the people that are saying it. It makes them look foolish because it's literally the active cheering of a potential medication. And what if Trump was right? What if all of a sudden hydroxychloroquine was something that would have worked? Now you have a bunch of of course, you'll save your criticism for the Democrats that said it's immoral to even talk about it. You won't talk about that. You'll just say, no, even if Trump was right, he was wrong to discuss it. Rather than people died so that I could criticize Trump. It's so stupid. Unbelievable. Anyways, Texas Rangers, I'll be done with COVID here. The Texas Rangers, of course, it's just going to keep going. The mob will never be satiated. Never. You could give them total power tomorrow and they would want more. That's just the way it is. That's the way it'll always be. Let me check the time here. Okay. I got some more of these to get through, so moving on. Sorry, Texas Rangers. White supremacists, you know. Here's another one to listen to.
Patriarchy is a system of oppressions. Patriarchy is a system, or more recently, I use this definition of patriarchy. Now, the textbook definition is patriarchy is a system of oppressions that privileges male dominance. And that just kind of goes over people's head. So I want them to imagine an octopus. And the head of that octopus is patriarchy. And each one of those tentacles is capitalism, sexism, racism, ableism, ageism, homophobia, transphobia. And depending on where in the world you live, one or two or three or four or all 8 of those tentacles are working in unison to keep that head of the octopus, which is patriarchy, alive. Because people don't see it. It's like asking a fish, what is water? When you ask a fish what is water, it doesn't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? What is water? Because it's the very air we breathe is patriarchy. So it's universal. And then depending on where you live, each one of those tentacles of the octopus is that oppression that keeps patriarchy alive. So what we have to do in this moment is see that octopus. And I'm sorry, octopus, I know you're a beautiful creature. You're very intelligent, but you're also very devious because you get through cracks. And I want us to start cutting off all of those tentacles in order to destroy patriarchy. Because when people ask me, what is feminism? Feminism is the destruction of patriarchy. So I'm coming for you, octopus.
I thank you for just giving me a framework to explain this to my 7-year-old. Because
there you go.
At the moment.
I'm sure the 7-year-old will appreciate that. Hey, got to indoctrinate them when they're young. See, everything's patriarchy. You starting to see the picture? These people are taken seriously. Everything's patriarchy. So I brought this up to Destiny. If everything's patriarchy, right? Because understand the way this works. Do you see what she's saying? Racism, sexism. This is what intersectionality is. This is what I was debating the other day last week when I debated that woman Mel. Intersectionality is saying we need to ally all of these groups. It does say, one, we should look at people hyper-specific of the groups they are. So it's cultural Marxism in the sense it says it breaks you into categories, your race, your gender, etc. So if you're a black woman, you're not just oppressed as a black person, and you're not just oppressed as a woman, you're oppressed as a black woman. But it also tries to seek to ally all of these supposed oppressed groups against the oppressor groups. Right? This is identity politics 101. This is encouraging bigotry and racism. That's what it is. Saying people are evil based on the way they were born. That's what they're doing. That's what intersectionality is. Now, you see here how she says racism, sexism, all of that's part of this patriarchy. So explain to me this, right? If that's true, if the same people that are denouncing sexism are also denouncing racism, right? Explain this to me. Those people also happen to be supporting Black Lives Matter, and they seem to be talking an awful lot about racist law enforcement. And their justification is, look at the data. Law enforcement's harsher on blacks compared to whites by X percentage. But that same law enforcement system is way harsher on men than to women. And so I said, if that's true, how could shouldn't the feminists shut up then? Leave the black men talk and leave men talk. But the feminists, the idea if there's a patriarchy in a system set up to dominate for men, why are men getting crushed by the law enforcement system? Wouldn't we just be ignoring the crimes of men in law enforcement? Why is it that when blacks are disproportionately affected by police, we say that's proof of racism, but when men are disproportionately affected more, we still say that that's evidence of patriarchy? And that's what, I brought this up in my debate with that guy Destiny. That's what he said. Yes, the patriarchy also negatively affects men. You see how that works? Men are the cause of all problems. Even when men are affected by the problems, it's still men's fault. You see? You see how that works? Everything is patriarchy. It's like the air we breathe. It's all around us. So if you disagree with her, that's because you're still in patriarchy. She's outside of patriarchy. So you have to agree with her, or you're a bigoted, racist, sexist. You see how this works yet? Yeah, Kat, feminists do talk about what? The idea that, yes, I know they do. They talk about the idea that the patriarchy leads to law enforcement being disproportionately vile towards men. They do say stuff like that because they're nonsensical. That's exactly the type of stuff they say. It's a non-falsifiable position. Everything is evidence of the patriarchy. Everything. Literally, take anything. Everything good that happens in the world is the result of fighting against the patriarchy. Everything bad is the result of patriarchy. Anything. Even if it's stuff directed at men. What more blatant example could you get of, okay, so you're saying that men are corrupt, and corrupt men in systems of power acting in masculine ways allows the system to be beneficial towards men, which has caused the law enforcement system to be detrimental towards men. Yep. Have I read any feminist writings? Yes, I've read many feminist writings. Next. Skip that one. Just real quick, this is a quick one, but while we're discussing COVID again. James Wood says, blithering idiot Gavin Newsom closes church and restaurants, but says this is okay. No virus is being spread there, right? Looks like proper social distancing to me. Cat Ballou says, well, to be honest, men have ruled the world. And? So? What does that have to do with patriarchy? It's nonsensical. So if men have ruled the world, I think it's quite... Fine, we'll accept your premise there, Cat Ballou. So men have ruled the world for, we'll say, the past 5,000 years of recorded history. During that 5,000 years, things have gotten markedly better over and over again. The quality of being born alive today was winning the genetic lottery. So I guess it's thanks to men, right? Patriarchy's awesome. Look at what it's done for us. Thanks. Next. Sorry, I gotta rush along. I haven't even got to what I... There's Antifa protesting Black Lives Matter by setting the elk statue on fire again last night. Because elks are racist. It's all right. We've already set the precedent, no problem. I'm sure if anyone would have tried to defend that statue, they'd have been arrested. Next.
Your baby mother, Junior's in a hospital. So when I called her, she...
I don't have time to go through, but, this is the father of the 1-year-old that was killed in New York City. He says, everybody's talking about Black Lives Matter. What about baby lives? You took an innocent child from a mother and father. Well, as we know, they don't care. They don't care at all. AOC would say that was just someone who wanted bread that killed his daughter. That's what it was about. They don't care at all. They don't at all. And they'll lie to you. They tell you, when you talk to these people, you say, what about all these homicides and stuff? They say, we talk about that. We talk about that too. We do. We talk about that. No, they don't. It's a lie. They're talking about this now. They're talking about the police, which is a small... far small, 15 unarmed blacks, they're focused on that. While the policies they're suggesting are causing homicides to increase, and they don't care at all. They don't care about the 7,000 homicides. They pretend to, but that doesn't get them political power. So they don't focus on that, because the issue isn't making things better in the inner city communities for Black Lives Matter. The issue is obtaining power. So they don't care about the homicides at all. Ask AOC. That 1-year-old was shot because someone was trying to get bread, right? Next. I didn't even get to the story I wanted to talk about today. Here we have Maisie Hirono calling...
Because he has a base of supporters who are very anti-immigrant and white supremacists.
There you go. Mazie Hirono, you're a Trump supporter, you're a white supremacist. Just insanity. Imagine a Republican candidate saying this about Democrats. All Democrat supporters, they're all racist, they're all bigots. So stupid. Tim Pool says, well, the NPR says, more than 1,000 employees at the CDC, the medical experts you're supposed to trust, right? Remember them? You have to listen to them. More than 1,000 have signed a letter calling for the agency to address, quote, ongoing and reoccurring acts of racism and discrimination against black employees. It also calls for the CDC to declare racism a public health crisis in the United States. Now, we know from the Bureau of Justice statistics in 2018 that an individual black is 48 times more likely to commit a violent crime against a white, yet the CDC ignores all of this evidence. They're supposed to be, remember the coronavirus? Remember it's supposed to be like this deadliest thing, it's going to wipe us all out, and we have to take care of it. What's the CDC focused on? Racism. Making excuses for Black Lives Matter to have a Marxist takeover of the country and be out there rioting and spreading the disease. And Tim Pool makes the point, well, if it's such a crisis, how come we have to have fake race hoaxes all the time? If it's so bad, wouldn't we be able to actually point out these stories? Let's skip that. Oh my God, what time is it? Man, I really wanted to cover this story, and I only got like 20 minutes. All right. I'm going to do this quick. So Bari Weiss is centrist, lefty, I don't know, she's been on Joe Rogan. I'm not going to claim to know much about her, but by no means a Trump supporter, not a right-wing person. She worked for the opinion section of the New York Times, and she retired today, right? Because she's starting to realize that the New York Times is a rag. And in her retirement letter that she released to the public, or quitting, I don't think retiring is the right word. There's a word for this, man. Tired. I had a long day. Resignation letter. Nobody wants a Marxist takeover now who's being hysterical, says Cat Blue. Apparently you haven't been paying attention. It couldn't be more blatant. You have BLM saying we're trained Marxists, some of their leaders. You have them talking about how just the Black Lives Matter person I talked to the other day admits that they're rabid socialists. He admits it. That's what they want. Of course that's what they want. Did you just hear them talking about capitalism being one of the tentacles of the patriarchy? They want to get rid of capitalism. What do you think they're going to replace it with? Now who's being hysterical? It's so funny. I know. You don't live in reality. I get it. Anyways, Bari Weiss resigns, and she talks about how insane this cancel culture has become and about how you can't tell the truth anymore. And that now it's just a propaganda piece, the New York Times. So Eric Weinstein, who's one of the Weinstein brothers who has the Dark Horse podcast in the portal, I'm just going to read his Twitter thread and then we'll talk about it because it sums it up better than I could. This is a left-winger. Now, he even mentions in here he has to get his bona fides in about hating Trump. He mentions it. But I want you to think about that. There's no Marxist takeover, though, right? There's none. Black Lives Matter isn't racist. They're not Marxist. They're just reasonable people, right, Kat? He says, Bari Weiss has now resigned from the New York Times, and that's not even the story. I've just spoken to Bari and learned that I'm finally free to tweet. Her letter hints at the real news. The loss of the news is now the news, and the news cannot cover it. On 6/1/17, Ms. Weiss was the only journalist covering the news. Only she was doing it from the opinion section because the New York Times refused to find interesting that there was a racist Maoist insurrection at a public college where police would be stood down. Oh, that didn't happen though, right, Kat? That didn't happen. You must not have heard about that. Got it. Yeah, no one wants that. No one's Maoist. No one's racist, right? No one wants that. Moving on. At that moment, Bari Weiss became all that was left of the paper of record. Why? Because the existence of black racists with the power to hunt professors with baseball bats and even redefine the word racism to make their story impossible to cover ran totally counter-narrative. At some point after 2011, the New York Times gradually stopped covering the news and became the news instead. And Bari's been fighting internally from the opinion section to reestablish journalism inside the New York Times. A total reversal of the Chinese wall that separates news from opinion. There's no communism here, right? That's not what people want. This is the paper in 2016 that couldn't be interested in the story that millions of Americans were likely lying to pollsters about Trump. The paper refused to ask the CIA, FBI if Epstein was intelligence related. The paper that can't report that it seeks race rioting. Here you have Ida Wells talking about the founder of the racist 1619 Project, saying it would be an honor if these rioters called it the 1619 riots. New York Times writer. No one's saying that. No one wants this Marxist takeover. No one wants that, right? He continues, I've had the honor of trying to support both Bari Weiss at the New York Times and Bret Weinstein in their battles to simply stand alone against the internal mob mentality. It is the story all over the country. Our courageous individuals are being hunted at work for dissenting. No Marxism here, right? Before Bari resigned, I did a podcast with her. It was chilling. I'd make an innocuous statement of simple fact and ask her about it. She'd reply, that is obviously true, but I'm sorry we can't say that here. It will get me strung up. That's when I stopped telling her to hang on. So what just happened? Let me put it bluntly. What was left of the New York Times just resigned from the New York Times. The Times canceled itself. A separate Hong Kong exists in name only. The new New York Times and affiliated news is now the chief threat to our democracy. This is the moment when the passengers who have been becoming increasingly alarmed start to entertain a new idea. What if the people now in the cockpit are not airline pilots? Well, the Twitter activists at the New York Times and elsewhere are not journalists. What if those calling for empathy have a specific deadness of empathy? Those calling for justice are the unjust. Those calling privilege are the privileged. Those calling for equality seek to oppress us. Those anti-racist are open racist. The progressives seek to regress. The journalists are covering up the news. Try the following exercise. Put a minus sign in front of nearly every banner claim made by the progressives. Question, does that make more sense? Those aren't the pilots you imagine, and we are far closer to revolution than you think. There's no Marxist takeover. Nope. That's hyperbolic. Eric Weinstein must just be a rabid Trump supporter, right? He continues, Bari and I agree on a lot, but also disagree fiercely. And so I've learned that she is tougher than tough. But these university and journalistic workplaces are now unworkable. They are the antithesis of what they were built to stand for. It's astounding how long she held out. Read her letter. I have asked her to do a makeup podcast and she agreed. Stay tuned if you don't want to be surprised again by what's coming to understand this. Just as there's been no functioning president, there's now no journalism. We're moving towards a planet of pure activism. Prepare to lose your ability to call the police and for more autonomous zones where kids die so that governors and mayors can LARP as kayfabe revolutionaries. Disagree with Miss Weiss all you want. She isn't perfect. But Bari's a true patriot that tried to stand alone. Glad she's out. We are not finished by a long shot. What the intellectual dark web tried to do must now be given an institutional home. Podcast with Bari in the portal to come as soon as she's ready. Stay tuned. Thanks for reading this. PS retweet. Right, she's an opinion writer. We got it, Kat. She's a muddy past. Oh, man. Yeah, that's true. Yep. I mean, when the racists were chasing Bret Weinstein around with ball bats, trying to have a Maoist revolution at Evergreen University, that was just, yeah, the checkered past. Fake news, 11 FBI agents need to go make sure Bubba Wallace didn't get hurt by a garage pole, right? But story after story of this cancel culture, of racist masking as anti-racist, racial hatred, rioting, all of this revolutionary Marxist garbage, and still people deny it. No, that's not what's happening. Even when people on the left start to speak up. By the way, Andrew Sullivan, writer at New York Magazine, quit today for the same reasons. Let's check the chat here real quick. The problem with Bari is she lacks intellectual intelligence, says Kat. Yeah, very... You sound so smart saying that. Yes, Maoist revolution. That's exactly right. That's exactly what we're saying. And I'm sure there were people like you that laughed when Mao was taking over, and you would have been a good little soldier and read your little red book and praised Mao and said, may he live for 1,000 years, like all the other revolutionaries or cowards that went along with it. I get it. I totally get it, Kat. I understand. It's a hard pill to swallow. I get it. The progressives that you've been cheering for are a disaster. The people that you cheer for that you think are anti-racist are racist. The people that you call progressive are actually regressive. The people that talk to everyone else down because they're privileged are themselves the privileged ones. The people that talk about institutional bigotry are the ones controlling the institutions, being bigoted to people they disagree with. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, Kat, and you're welcome to come on my channel anytime and hear the truth, or at least to the best of my ability to tell it. I'm sure you've studied Mal. I'm sure you have. Liked what you saw, eh? That's right. Marxists are fascist. It's two sides of the same coin. I get it, Kat. No true Scotsman. Real Marxism's never been tried. Real Marxism's great. No, the Marxism we saw was fascism. Real Marxism's fantastic. Oh, boy. Anyways, stop talking to just one person. But I do appreciate you being here, Kat. It makes it more interesting. I just don't want religious zealots taking my freedom, says Kat. Great! Then I guess you'd be against the cult that is Black Lives Matter and cancel culture. They're as religious zealotry as you could get. So kudos to Eric Weinstein for speaking out against this. This is exactly what's happening. Even people on the left are waking up to this. Even people like Bari Weiss are waking up to it. There is no journalism. Now, here's the problem, right? Here's the blind spot that Eric Weinstein has. We've known this for how long? It just seemed more reasonable. See, when you had the puppet on the left and the puppet on the right, so you had George Bush and you had Obama, the journalist was always against middle America. They were always activists. It's just they didn't have a target because they are establishment. I've said, how long have I said this on the channel? The media does not hold truth to power. The media covers the truth, covers up the truth for the powerful. That's the media's job. They are mouthpieces for the establishment. That's what they are. They covered up all the abuse we saw in the intel agencies going after Trump. They endorsed the riots. They're covering up the fact that Democratic governors encouraged death camps in these nursing homes. All of this stuff, over and over and over again. And the election of Trump showed that clearer than ever before. People like Eric Weinstein wouldn't have woken up if it wasn't for Trump being elected. Because they would have continued to think, oh, the media, it's the New York Times, they're credible. They weren't. They haven't been for over a decade. They're propagandists. That's what they are. They just didn't have to be as blatantly propagandist when their buddy George Bush was in power. Yes, they disliked Bush and would have rather John Kerry been in there. But still, it's all part of the same establishment team. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And again, not to keep picking on Kat, but do you see, and who's on Periscope, by the way, and thanks for watching on Periscope, this stuff could be right in front of your face and it's still denied. What? There's nothing crazy going on. Revolution? Marxism? No, none of that. No one wants that. No one wants that. No one wants that was the quote. No one wants that. It's so funny. It's just hilarious. Jeff and Kat says, what do you say to people that just believe in the media all the time? I've had this problem with a few friends, and they seem to love things like CNN and stupid journalists. Look, the first thing is, and look, I know that Kat, who's been disagreeing with me on Periscope, but let me say this, like, I do welcome Kat being here, and I know that I'm kind of being snarky, but that's just in my personality. But I don't begrudge Kat at all. In fact, I have plenty of friends that are total left-wingers, like socialists, communists, plenty of friends. We just don't talk a lot about politics and stuff like that. So the first thing is, don't lose any friendships over politics. The second thing to remember is, even as things get tighter and things get scarier, I don't know if scary is the right word, but as we start to lose our country more and more, as we're seeing, and it seems like it's more important to fight back, and it is, but there's a way to do it, right? And just, your actions are more important than your words. So if you show that you actually are a caring person and that you're a decent person, then that's the first step into being able to convince them, well, hey, maybe Rob's wrong, but at least he seems like a reasonable person, right? Because it is who I am. I am a reasonable person. And you might disagree with me and think I'm an idiot, but I'm not an evil or immoral person. So that's step one. Step two is, I think the best thing to do is take a situation where you can see that the media blatantly lied that almost everyone can agree on, and start with that. For example, Epstein killed himself. Or even before that. The media basically buried the Epstein story since 2009. Remember there was that woman from ABC that was like, I had this story and it got buried. Everyone agrees that Epstein was a monster. He committed some of the most heinous crimes with some of the most powerful people. And we know that our media failed to cover it. They covered up for it. It's what they did. And so that's how you start to work in. You say, do you see what happened here? And the more simplistic things like that. See, I could explain, for example, how the media malfeasance in covering up and being partners with the intel agencies and going after Donald Trump, how insanely corrupt that is. The problem is it's a complicated story. So people that believe CNN are just going to be like, you're wrong. Right? So what you have to do is start with the situations that anyone could blatantly see. Right? And also show where the media has changed their opinions on things in a total 180 degree. Stuff like that could help. But eventually, there's some people that just won't wake up. They're going to trust it. And by the way, the same could be true of the other side, just so you know. There are people that believe everything Donald Trump says. That's a mistake, too. So I certainly think it's worse on the left, absolutely. But, going at him being a huge jerk probably isn't going to change their mind. But hey, do what you can. But yeah, that's my advice, to make things as simplistic as possible. And if the media is willing to lie to cover up for sex trafficker, what else are they willing to lie about? I can't see Barr's corruption. I see Barr's... Yeah, in a way I do see Barr's corruption. For example, he declined to prosecute James Comey, who was recommended by the IG. No, what are you talking about? What was corrupt about Barr? That, for example, we want to talk about the corrupt media. That Barr accurately portrayed what the Mueller report said in his synopsis of it, and yet the media to this day is claiming he didn't. What else was corrupt about Barr? That Barr recommended that Amy Berman Jackson, who was an Obama-appointed judge that gave Roger Stone 7 years, which was unheard of, for the same crime that we know that McCabe, Comey, Mills, Abedin, Hillary, etc. committed, lying to investigators. They all got 0 time. Roger Stone got 7, so Barr recommended the sentence be reduced to 2 years. That's the corruption. What corruption are we talking about here? Again, this is just like I was telling you earlier, Kat. This is exactly what happens. We have the Democrats that say we're going to do something that's horribly corrupt, and then when the Republicans try to use the same mechanisms to correct that, or not even Republicans, Trump and his team, to correct that corruption, they say, aha, that in itself is corrupt. So, for example, you could be Joe Biden and Obama and issue a quid pro quo that's actually being investigated right now in the Ukraine by Ukrainian prosecutors that say they have evidence of bribes attempted to be given by Joe Biden and his son to people in the Ukraine, and they have evidence of the corruption of Joe Biden's son, and they have evidence that Biden offered a quid pro quo to get a prosecutor fired because he was looking into Joe Biden's son. We have all of that. That's a Ukrainian prosecutor right now. By the way, appointed by a president that was praised by Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrats as anti-corruption. We have all of that occurring right now. That was fine. That quid pro quo was fine. The media didn't care. The Democrats didn't care. Admitted quid pro quo by Joe Biden. But a non-quid pro quo by Donald Trump seeking to investigate that crime is corruption. That's the definition that we hear from the Democrat. Where's Trump's tax returns? Who cares? Why? So you can see them and say, oh my God, he had business in Russia. That proves... Or he paid an extortionist. Who cares where his tax returns... Is that a crime? No, it's not a crime. And yes, we know corrupt justices said that he has to hand over his tax returns. We'll see what happens. Just the scramble, so funny. You start to point out corruption of the Democrats. Trump's tax returns? The tax returns? What about the tax returns? Yeah, okay. But wait a minute. Didn't someone from Trump's team talk to a Russian once? That's proof, right? Mueller didn't say there wasn't collusion. It's hilarious. The straws that will be grasped. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But, yep, that's all. Just so you know, that's always the way it works. They want to engage in corruption. It's the same playbook over and over. Over and over and over. You want to know what the playbook is? And I've told you this multiple times. Go watch one of these riots. Watch one of these Black Lives Matter. Hey, thanks, BPW. Oh, we'll see you. Yeah, he says, I know you got to run soon, but you got to run now. I will get the computer. Hopefully it comes in soon. Thank you so much, BPW. Here's what you do. Go watch one of the Black Lives Matter rides. Here's the Democrats in a nutshell. Eventually you'll see someone, you'll probably see a woman, right? But it could be a man too. But it's particularly telling because it turns out that a lot of women do this because they get to play the frail victim. And that's part of the image of this. If a big burly man gets hit by the police, it's less impactful as an image, a propaganda image, than if a petite person, particularly a petite woman, is harmed. So what they'll do is they'll throw stuff at the police, they'll scream at them, they'll spit on them, they'll call them the most heinous names over and over and over. And this is almost every one of these riots you can see. They're there, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're attacking, they're throwing, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming. And finally the cops are like, okay, this is unlawful, we're going to disperse it. They're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're screaming, they're spitting, they're yelling, they're throwing things, and then bam, the police shoot tear gas. And that same girl is like, throws her hands up, goes, help, brutality, help, help, ah! That's the Democrats in a nutshell. They'll do anything by any means necessary. They'll break any law, they'll be as corrupt as possible, they'll come after you in any way. And then as soon as you push back, they say, you're a bully! They'll use the legal system to go after you in corrupt ways. As soon as you push back by using the legal system, you're corrupt. They'll investigate Trump for 4 years, but Trump tries to investigate Biden for half a second, and that's impeachable. That's who they are. Every single thing they do, they are what they accuse you of. They'll be racist to you. I showed you last night in here with Tucker Carlson's tweets, right? They said, Aaron Rupar said, look at Tucker Carlson's white supremacist tweets. What was his tweets? Saying that in Seattle, where they had public works employees be forced to attend a conference where they had to reject their whiteness, that is in itself racism. Tucker was accused of being racist for pointing out racist policies. You see how it works? We say white people are evil and need to reject their whiteness. And if you disagree with that, you're a racist. Every single thing they do, that's what it is. That's why you have Kat on here going, well, Bill Barr is corrupt. What did Bill Barr do that was corrupt? Was there an IG report that was requested by the Democrats that said that Bill Barr 17 times violated laws or 17 times broke internal misconduct policies in order to spy on a presidential campaign? Oh, wait, that was the Democrats. Or did they work and pay foreigners to get dirt on Trump using Russian... Or did Barr pay foreigners using Russian sources to get dirt on his political opponents? Oh, wait, that was the Democrats. Did he meet with some Trump associate in a tarmac that he was investigating? Oh, wait, that was the Democrats. All of this, it all occurs over and over and over and over and over again. And the Democrats don't bat an eye. I remember when the tarmac thing came out, I remember talking to a couple good friends of mine, intelligent people that are Democrats. I said, I guess no one's talking about this. Yes, they are. Immediately got enraged. Yes, people are talking about it. Oh, really? Did Loretta Lynch end up recusing herself? No, she didn't. FBI agents admitted in texts that were released that they knew even if they would have recommended charges against Hillary Clinton, there was no way in hell that Loretta Lynch would have went after them. But we just have to forget about that. Eric Holder called himself Obama's wingman. But we have to forget about that. All of a sudden, it's unprecedented that Bill Barr, who I think is doing a terrible job, he's being accused of being corrupt. What has he done to help Trump? Nothing. What was so corrupt? Accurately portraying what the Mueller report said? Recommended Roger Stone only get 2 instead of 7 years? That's the corruption? Or actively claiming, I've yet to see any results, but claiming that he was going to investigate Crossfire Hurricane and the abuse that happened there? Barr did not spin the Mueller report. Barr accurately, in 3 sentences, said what the Mueller report said. There was no evidence that anyone in the Trump campaign illegally conspired with anyone in Russia to affect the 2016 election, and it could not determine it did not come to a conclusion on whether or not Trump obstructed justice. It's exactly what Barr said. That's exactly what the report said. And then Mueller, who's basically like Biden, an infirmed old man, claimed to have wrote a letter to Barr, which certainly wasn't written by Mueller because we could see that he could barely string 2 words together when he actually testified in front of Congress. But he was upset at the way that Barr talked about this. Since when is it the job of an investigator to worry about how things are being talked about in the press? Barr asked Mueller, are you objecting to what I say? No, what you say is what the conclusions we found, but I just don't like the way that you're talking about it. What was he supposed to say? What was Barr supposed to say? We just had a 3-year investigation into a president based on corrupt FBI officials using unverified foreign intelligence from Russians paid for by the Democrats that was never verified, that 17 times the FBI broke policy to spy on Trump's team over, that the Democrats lied for a year about paying for, including Hillary's team and the DNC. We just had that go on, and you're upset that, well, technically what Barr said was the truth of what Mueller's report said, but I don't like the way he spun it. This is insanity. You're making yourself look like a fool. And not you individually. Well, you are individually, but also the entire group of people that say that. I don't know. Kat wants to know, so when is it a job for the AG to be Trump's personal bulldog? I don't know. Would you prefer he be a wingman like Eric Holder? I'm sure you spoke up then. Oh, wait, you didn't. And how is it being his personal bulldog? Accurately portraying what the... If you were an AG and your job is to enforce the law in this country, you're one of the chief enforcers of the law, and you found out that intelligence agencies used unverified research sourced by Kremlin officials to accuse the President of the United States of getting dirt from Kremlin officials. You understand, they literally were investigating Trump for what they themselves were doing. They were getting dirt on Trump from Kremlin officials that was unverified to prove that Trump was getting dirt on Hillary from Kremlin officials. That's what they were accusing Trump of. So the accusation was, hey, wait a minute. Is Trump doing exactly what we're doing? We can't have that. And so after all that, you're upset that what? You think that the Attorney General should just be like, stoic and not be outraged at the weaponization of the intel community? It's so stupid. Yeah, I am getting a little riled up. I just think it's so funny, like this, and I should stay calm, I know. But the stupidity of this stuff, again, it's that they constantly, we're principled. I'm principled. So I try to accept when people are discussing things with me that they're arguing in good faith. And I'll say things like, yes, when Trump did this, this was wrong. Yes, when this happened, it was wrong. I will say that. They're not principled. They'll ignore all the corruption on their side and then be like, but here's one little thing. I don't like the one word that Barr used here, so, that's corrupt. Never mind the enormous corruption we see on the other side. And then I'm supposed to pretend that they're arguing in good faith? Maybe they're just ignorant. I don't know. Barr goes around firing everyone who looks into Trump's crimes. You mean like that guy at the Southern District of New York that let Epstein go free for how long? Mm-hmm. Oh, and then as soon as they got rid of him, Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested? Yep. So let me ask you this. If Barr is corrupt for trying to fire someone because supposedly they were looking into Trump, then what does that make the Democrats for actively impeaching Trump for looking into Joe Biden? Why is it okay for them to investigate and do whatever they want to their political opponent, but not the other way around? Why is that okay? Again, I told you all this during the impeachment stuff. This is what Democrats, I'm assuming Kat's a Democrat, this is what they want. They want to be able to break the law with impunity and then make it illegal for you to look into their law breaking. You starting to see a pattern? Like, let's go to St. Louis. They want to be able to riot and burn down buildings, and the Attorney General there will free the rioters, won't charge them with crimes. But if you defend yourself from the rioters and people that crashed into your gate and threatened your wife and your dog, then you get arrested. You see how that works? All right, Kat, you're just trolling now, or you're totally ignorant. They do have stuff on Hunter. That's what the Ukrainian prosecutor right now is talking about. So, okay. Well, time to end, I think, on this note. So, thank you, everyone, for being here. Sorry, Kat, that I was picking on you the whole time, but whew, you're out there. But I do welcome you being here. In all honesty, it's all in good fun. Not just good fun, it's the truth. But I enjoyed the back and forth. If you ever want to be on the show, and actually have a voice as opposed to just typing, please let me know. So some ways you can support me. Again, I'll put my email address out. If you have anything, if you'd like to donate to me, or if you just have an article you want me to look at, a question, I can't promise I'll get to every email. I'm really, really busy, but I'll try my best. And I think some people in the chat can tell you that I've responded to them. rob.nor@gmail.com. If you want to donate and you don't want to use Patreon, PayPal, and those type of things, feel free. You can contact me there. I give you my P.O. box. Have you noticed feminists are shut as hell during the coronavirus? Proof that there's some fake punks. Yeah, I agree. I do like to fight. I absolutely do. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. I enjoy pushing back because I think that we need more conservatives that are pushing back. So I don't mind this at all. I'm not going to go through this, Cat. You can go back and watch all my stuff on the impeachment. I have probably 100 hours of stuff on this channel up going, actually watching the impeachment hearings live. It's all garbage. The idea that you think that Trump asked for a quid pro quo. They never even proved that. Even if there was a quid pro quo, who cares? It's okay to ask for a quid pro quo if there was a legitimate crime that was being investigated. There was. We know that what went on with Hunter and Joe Biden, anytime that a sitting president or someone in the presidential team uses $1 billion US tax dollars to get a prosecutor fired that's looking into their family member, there should be an investigation. I don't care if Trump said, hey, can you do me a favor to the Ukrainian president? He should be doing that. That is a gross misuse of our funds and corruption of the highest level. So anyways, you can donate to me to PayPal, Patreon, DLive, YouTube. Please consider following me on DLive. That's the big push I have now. If I get 300 subscribers on DLive, I'll be able to post my regular videos there instead of just the live streams. I will be making a push here soon to be able to try to reach 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I'm close. I think I'm real close. So thank you to all for the Cat. We'll agree to disagree on some things. I appreciate that you agree with me on some things, but you're a good sport for being here. I really do appreciate it. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you also for the people in the chat. I know not a lot of people are on Periscope to be able to see the things that Kat was saying, but thank you to the people that were respectful to people that disagree. That's what we should be. And granted, I'm being a little snarky. I get it, but that's just my personality, and I don't mean ill by it. It's just who I am. So, again, I welcome anyone who disagrees. Thank you for thinking it was a great show, Luciano. So I'm going to head out. I got more stuff to do. Now, I am going to say, I don't know what my plan is for Thursday. Tomorrow night, I will try to do a live stream at 10:30 again, so you can check that out. Thursday, I'll either do a collaboration with Sarah or someone, or I won't be streaming. But I will say this weekend, I really, really am trying to work towards getting this second job. So I'll probably, other than my radio show, not be doing a lot this weekend. Also, I got to get my car inspected. And my puppy, I don't know if you guys saw Dorothy. It's time. Dorothy's old enough now that it's time that we have to take her in to get her spayed. So I'm sure that I'll have to be, it'll be a tough time for her, and I'll have to have ice creams for her and stuff like that. So I'm trying to do that this week, so I might be cutting back. And I have cut back on the debates as far as going on to other channels and debating until I get my new computer so that I can stream them on my channel as well. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I welcome all the support, whether it be financial or otherwise. I'm humbled that people would want to hear opinions of people like me. It really does. It's nice to know that there are people who are like-minded. It's nice to know there are people that disagree, but that are willing to come on and talk about this stuff. So it really is. It's a great feeling that I have so many people that watch me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And, hopefully my channel continues to grow, and it grows as a community with all of you too. And I'd be willing to support any of you that have channels or any endeavors that you may have. Again, you can email me at rob.nor@gmail.com. So thank you so much, everyone. You guys are the best. As always, have a good one.